got it. I'll work on it. Fuck yeah.
All right, man. Let's do this thing. 3, 2, 1. Hey, folks. Welcome to Bouncing Brains. I'm Sean Hatfield.
And I'm Freddy G.
And our illustrious guest today is writer, poet, playwright, director, anthology collaborator, editor of all stripes and hats, Seres Magaña.
Thank you for having me, bro.
Man, bro, the only introduction I ever got was just comedian Freddy G. Not even funny. It was just comedian Freddy G.
Well, the last introduction I had was kind of like this. When I was getting introduced to sexuality, my parents were sitting right across from me, kind of in the same way. I was right in the middle. They were right across from each other. They were both bald-headed for some reason, right? They talked to me about everything, bro. Introduction.
Yours went like that, too? I thought I was the only one.
Well, damn. That escalated very quick there. But I'd like to start off, since it's your first time here, for the people that don't know, and maybe I don't know either, just kind of give a bit of back information on who you are and what you do.
I'm a writer.
You already started wrong. So you were supposed to say,
Mi nombre
I was born, and then...
Oh, damn. From the moment I was born. Well... I was first thought of back in 1939. I'm scared. That's when they thought of me, man. No, but
Daddy was a forward thinker.
Yeah, my great grandfather or some shit. Well, my name is Seres Jaime Magaña. Yes, Seres with an S. Sometimes I'm Seres. Sometimes I'm Seres going the other direction. You never know what series you're gonna get, bro. And well, yeah, I'm a writer. I've been. Well, first, I would say foremost, I love stories. I love words, and art. And so, foremost, I'm an artist. I'm a person that just loves creativity, expression, and all that. And so, from that thing being like the core of it, I branch out into several things that give me the opportunity to be an artist, right? So I'm a poet. I present my poetry around town, around the valley. I am a host, which gives me the opportunity to meet a lot of other artists, to contribute into the community. I'm a theater director for the Far Community Theater. And I'm also putting a project together along with other artists, Damien Duque, who was here with you guys previously, and Nick Martinez Science, who is a local tattoo artist, and we've been putting Rabbit on the Moon together. So yeah, those are the things that I've been focusing on. Foremost, I'm an artist.
Awesome. Well put. And in case y'all want to know what he does for money, do I really want to put that out there like that?
No, yeah, man. I mean, I do offer services. Yeah, man. I mean, I host. I've done plenty of hosting. So I'm going to be hosting a show on November for Lluvia Lorelai. I'll check right now on my phone exactly when that date's gonna be. She does these talks. She published a book, Hablando con el Espejo, and she talks about plastic surgery and a bad experience that she had with plastic surgery, and she goes about an ongoing debate on that. I will be hosting that, and so that's part of the things I can do. I've been hosting at the Allstate Art Exhibit, Almaguer Art Exhibit here on Griffin Parkway. They do that one once a month, and I just host a part of the poetry, right? Just that section, right? And so anything that has to do with presenting artists and just presenting a show, Maestro de Ceremonias, MC.
Yeah.
I can do those services for fairly cheap, and also putting a show together, finding artists to be able to bring into your show. Those are the type of services I offer. And also directing, right? We're going to open up our next play at the Far Community Theater here on Monday and Tuesday. Next Monday and Tuesday, September 24th and 25th from 7:30 to 9:30 p.m. And there, pues, what can I say? Through directing, it's almost like teaching, man. In some sense, you get to transmit a lot of your experience as an artist. You also get to learn a lot from the artists that come in, and so that's another place where if you're looking to work together, definitely try out some acting at the Far Community Theater.
Gotcha. And then as far as, because we've had this conversation kind of off camera. As far as the acting, it's plays that it is, right? It's
plays, theater plays. Yeah,
theater plays. Okay.
Yeah. That's what I'm focusing on right now. The opportunities came in through there. I would love to maybe do some film maybe in the future.
No, that's where I was kind of going with it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I saw a posting on social media. Whether I'm not sure if you posted it or somebody else posted it and tagged you, but there were some auditions, and again, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if I read that it was auditions for a short film.
For a short film, yes.
Is that true?
It's not me that's directing that, but being part of the community, you get to meet a lot of other directors that are doing local work, and we work together at helping each other out, get the word out. We meet other actors in our own place, so we send actors each other's way and everything. And so he came over to the Far Community Theater and he was like, "Hey, I'm putting this show together. Here's the flyer." And so we announced those auditions, right? So aside from the theater, there is a lot of open auditions for filmmaking happening that other people are doing. There is one that I saw at STC. What is it called? Boca Chica, I believe it's called, a play. And that one's an open audition happening right now, too.
No, but the one I was talking about, that again, that's what I'm saying. I'm not sure if I understood correctly. But the one that I saw was for an actual short film. And that's what I was going to ask. Is that for a short film or is it also a play?
The one that you might have seen a while back was for a short film that another artist is creating.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I thought of auditioning myself.
You should, bro.
Because me and Sean have had this conversation before. I've auditioned in the past for a couple of things. I've auditioned like for commercials and stuff like that. I've never gotten a part, but I mean I've gone through the whole audition process, and we just had this conversation an episode ago or 2 episodes ago. Actually, an episode ago, where the first time that George Lopez came to perform here a couple years back at the old McAllen Convention Center, they were having people. They were going to get people to open for him, right? Yeah. But you actually had to go through an audition. So I auditioned for that. Apparently, I didn't fucking get it, but yeah, like I've done that kind of stuff, but I've never actually been gotten a part for anything. Now acting's not. I'm kind of like you. I'm a writer. At my core, I'm a writer. I mean, I've written a book or whatever, and I like to write, and hence I do comedy and write along with that, but I don't think that I'm like acting something that I really would like to pursue, but it is one of those things that you want to throw in your bag, just to say that you did it. That's one of those things I would like to, even a part, bro, even if it's just one line. Like I don't know if y'all remember that one movie. Did y'all see that one movie? Don't Be a Menace while drinking your juice in the hood. Even if I was that dude that came out just real quick, message, even that, man, a small part like that, I would be happy with it. Just so I can get that IMDb credit. This is all I want.
Right. Yeah, man. Auditioning, man. Like it's hard to tell what people are looking for, right? And it just takes practice to know how to go to an audition. Because there's a trick also to auditioning, kind of like when you go and interview for a job. There's a trick to auditioning, right? And but you get through a lot of experience by first starting small. So community theater offers a space for that, right? Community theater is open to the community, and it wants people who are fresh in the art to come in and gain that experience, right? So the doors are more open in a community theater and in local theater too. A lot of these local filmmakers, they're looking to make their own name. They're looking to let their work out. So they're also looking for people who are just starting as well, right?
Yeah.
So you could audition for big jobs, and if you don't get hired, I would say don't get discouraged. There is other opportunities that are startup opportunities, and you should start there. Local community theater, local theater. That's a good way to start if anybody wants to go into the acting route.
Yeah.
Have you been tempted to jump on stage yet?
Well, I was thrown on stage on the first play on the tragic corrido of Romeo and Lupe. It was an adaptation of Romeo and Juliet, and the priest that marries them, I played him, right? So I was the mischievous old man that was like, yes, marry each other against your parents' will and everything, and kill each other. I mean, suicide or whatever, And I really enjoyed writing that guy, writing my adaptation of that guy, and giving some insight into how he did not see any sin or any error in what Romeo and Lupe in mine were doing. He didn't see anything wrong. He actually saw more sin in not following their love, right? So writing that argument was interesting, and performing it was awesome. I wasn't completely out of the box, right? It was my first performance, but like everything, man, it takes practice, and I will definitely jump on it sometime again. And directing is a very different trip from acting, and directing comes closer to storytelling. Acting is very different. Yeah.
Understandable.
Were you? Because from what I understand, the first play, you wrote the whole thing, right?
Yeah. Well, it was an adaptation, so Shakespeare wrote half of it.
No. Well played, brother. Well played. Well played. I like that. Okay, this is where I'm going with it. So, and I'm about to throw something out there, in the wind, on camera, and for the world to know. I've never openly said this. I'm not gay. But what I'm
openly
saying,
said that.
but what I'm saying is, I wrote, still writing, kind of, because I haven't written anything on it in over a year, maybe.
Okay.
But I started writing a script. The reason I say a script is because if I want to be really honest with you, I don't know the format. I don't know right now, or when I started, I was writing a story that just came to my mind, right? Mm-hmm. But what I'm trying to get at, without trying to go into much detail, and the reason I said what I said earlier was because I don't know if I'm ever gonna do anything with it. It'll probably just never see the light of day. It'll just probably stay with me or whatever, right? But what I'm saying is, when it comes to writing the play, how do you go about, like, the format and the writing and stuff like that?
Well, when it comes to the format, I've learned it over the years, right? Reading plays. There's different ways people write a plays. Well, you always keep the same format of a person speaks. In the parentheses, you have action. Those are the regular formats.
No, well, tell me, because I don't know that. That's exactly what I want you to tell me.
Well, your
so
format,
what's the regular format that you're talking about?
Well, your regular format, the way I do it is you introduce your characters first, which is you have a page saying who all your characters are. You don't have to say your settings if you have a lot of setting changes. And when you start the scene, it is best to facilitate for the director and for the actors as they're reading the script, because not all script writers do this. You can mention the setting right off. This is happening at this place. These are the actors present, and these are the actions they're taking. That's usually in italics. And then you have the dialogue and actions being put in parentheses, and that's just how you go about it, right? So that's your format. That's fairly simple. And then when it comes to writing the story, it goes like when you make a painting, you want to create an outline, and then you build like your first shade and the next color and the next color on top, and you start filling in the blanks, creating depths and all that, right? So, but you first need to create your first draft or outline, in order to kind of help yourself not be too sporadic or too. It's good to be intuitive, but not to make the whole story be written intuitively, step by step. Rather, let your intuition like play a part when you come up with the whole thing. Come up with like a focus point with your story, right? Plan out your scenes. That's the way I go about it, right? Plan out your scenes, and then start filling in the blanks, man. You start drawing the story, you know? Yeah.
Gotcha. Now, as far as the scenes, okay, because like, let me give you the idea that not the idea of what I'm writing, but the idea that you're putting in my head. So you write your list of characters. These are the characters that are going to be in the play, movie, whatever. After you do that, I assume that you have to start creating your character.
Yeah,
meaning
definitely.
that you have to give this character their attitude, their persona, their place in the filming or in the film or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, who is this character gonna play? Who are they gonna be? Are they the bad guy? Are they so on and so forth?
Yeah.
So that's how you start creating your characters, right?
And
Now, as far as the scene, how is it that you go about writing that? Like, is it something? And again, I'm very new at this. Is it something that you just fucking say like, let's just say a character Sean and character Seres are having a conversation under the watchtower at this time?
Yeah, that's exactly how you would write it.
Oh, that's it? Like that? Okay.
And then you don't necessarily have to say conversation. You can say Sean and Freddy are standing under the watchtower. It's midday. It's midday. People walk around them, and like you just do a little brief description, and then you just start having their conversation. Now, if you want to talk about the the technique of creating the story, right? Some of the things that have helped me. I mean, creating a story, it's a lot of it's an art, right? So you have to. It takes years of studying, and I mean, you can write a story. Anybody can write a really good story, right?
I beg to differ, but
no. It's no.
I'm saying because of me, the shit that I got, I don't think anybody would look at it twice. You know what I'm saying?
Everything needs work, right? And thoughts grow. And so you can start with a thought that's like fresh and it hasn't completely matured, and then it just keeps growing, and then you get a better sense of what you're trying to say. You keep writing, and then you all of a sudden it becomes something that makes either makes a very clear statement, or says exactly what you wanted to say. But when it comes to the technique of storytelling, I kind of lost my train of thought there for a second. Some of the things that have helped me when it comes to creating characters, and this is something that I learned back in STC, fresh starting, right? And you just practice on how to make this work. When you read, because obviously if you want to be a writer, you should read a lot. You have to know
how to read.
Yeah, you have to, exactly, and know how to read, not just read, but knowing how to read. And knowing how to read is knowing how to perceive these sort of things, knowing how to break them down.
Yeah.
And one of the tricks that was introduced to me in college was foil characters and stock characters, right? And a stock character is a typical character that comes out throughout literature, like the cook, the server, the clown, the bad guy, like the villain, you know what I'm saying, the hero. Those are the fixed stock characters. Like they're up on a stock, you just get them off the stock and I tell character, right? Okay. Foils is the way they complement each other, right? So kind of like a good cop, bad cop, they're foils to each other, and they give you a whole impression of the whole experience you're having. And one's giving you the good one, and the other one's giving you the bad one. They complement each other. Characters complement each other. The good guy is complemented by the villain. The complemented by the sidekick. The sidekick might go home with his parents, and we see through situations at his home compliments of him, and then those things get complemented with the main hero, and you're just seeing how all of these things match with each other, and you get the overall whole idea. So creating foils, you can also create foils not just with characters but with ideas. Use ideas and see how they can complement each other. And that's how you, like a painting, like I say, with the painting, you see what matches, what goes right, what complements each other. And that's how you move forward with your characters as well.
Gotcha. Okay.
And very importantly, you always try to find your characters in real life, right?
Yeah. I know exactly what you mean. Yeah. The reason that I was asking that, and you know, I mean, I'm not trying to blow my own horn, right? But that's the idea that like what you said, you just kind of reinforced of what I thought writing a script would be, right? Because like with mine, because I haven't read it in, like I said, over a year, I haven't gotten over it. But from what I can remember, what I was trying to do, I was creating emotions. So like, for example, I had this character and this, I don't remember the names. I had 4 characters. I had already given them names. I don't remember the names, but for the sake of the example, this character's name was John. Okay. This character that I created, John, John is anger. Okay. So everything that I thought anger is described as far, I went so deep into it as far as like what color describes anger. Red, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
What is the depth of anger? Yeah. What triggers anger? And every descriptive thing that I could find with anger, I wrote it and I create John with anger. Yeah. So then I went and with my other character, the other character that I created was lust. And I created lust in the form of a woman, and then I created lust in the form of a man. And then what I did, I started to mesh those 3 together to create combustion, right? Okay. So then when I created combustion, I wrote combustion on the corner. Then I took combustion and I started giving combustion characteristics. Okay. And I think that as far as I go. Yeah. No, that's a good way of working with symbols. And it's a good start. And in some sense, you know, that could also be a work in itself, you know. Some writers write that way, which is this person is this symbol and this symbol and this symbol, and I'm showing maybe this chemical reaction and all that. I remember once reading a book about a doctor who is going into the mind of his patient, and it's a fantasy world, but everything in this fantasy world represents something in the illness, you know? Kind of like the Silence of the Lambs. I haven't seen it, but is that what happens there? Or is it Is it the Red Dragon? Which one's the one? Hannibal Lecter's.
Yeah, well, Hannibal Lecter's the character.
But it's the one where he gets into the mind of, or he tries to get, somebody gets into the mind of the patient.
Oh, no, you're talking about The Cell with Jennifer Lopez. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Never mind.
Different movie altogether.
Yeah. My bad.
Kind of like that. Yeah, and but Another way another interesting way to tackle character creation is so you can pick a character and say this character will represent anger, right? And this is just a regular critique that I have this in general. This is not attacking what you wrote, right? Mm-hmm. And this is just something that I've thought about since a while back. You watch certain movies and you'll see that they have this person represent the light, and this person represent the darkness, and this person represent love, right? And it shows you sort of a cultural description of these things, because you could change region and some of these opinions might change, right, of what these things represent. So it shows you more of like a cultural I mean, it has truth, definitely. I'm not saying that, right? I'm not saying that it doesn't, but it shows you something more like, so I connected anger with red. That's sort of like a cultural connection. Like it's somewhere in your life that connection got built, right? Yeah. But it's not necessary, and it's not maybe a necessary connection, right? So you can think though that a person, you can say my character is going to be anger, or my character is going to be angry.
That's different, though.
It's different. Yeah. So then your character might not be angry all the time and might not completely represent just anger. Now, that doesn't mean that all the characters are going to act the same, because everybody has the potential of anger, happiness, and all that. And here you go into psychology. What is the psychology of my character? What are the tendencies? What is my character's culture? How was my character brought up? What are his habits, his vices? And then you figure out, using all of those things, you figure out how that character will react to anger, how that character will react to sadness. He wouldn't be sadness or anger, but you would see him during those moments, because that's how you see people in real life. Freddy is not anger or sadness. But you go through all of those things. So if you want your story to be very close to real life, you show your characters with all those human tendencies. You know?
Well, as you brought up Romeo and Juliet earlier, that's probably one of the easiest examples to go through, where that it has that tonal shift halfway through from light teenage comedy romance to full on tragedy, and the character types that we're presented with in the early part of the story that are set up in one way are all of a sudden either contrasted or kind of mirrored in a way that you start seeing the underlying, it's not just teenage frivolity, it's also this useful braggadocious is pushing on the feud of the families.
So the characters, at first you get this idea of just like teenage love. And that's one thing that Shakespeare really had. A lot of his stories were stories that already existed. They were normal, they were regular like storylines, plot lines. And then he brings in some insight. How does he do that? How does he bring insight? How do you bring insight to a two-dimensional story? You add depth to the characters.
And that's what I was like saying earlier when I sat down and I started writing this. Like I sat down with the mentality of, I don't just want to write like John went to the store, he was robbed, he was shot, they caught I didn't want to write anything that you can basically see in plain sight. So I was like, if I'm really going to try to do this, I want to add that depth to everything that I write. And that's where the idea of like, instead of creating a character, like you said earlier, that is angry sometimes, why not create a character that is anger? Because I thought that it would be a different different approach.
No, and like I said, there is no right way of approaching yeah, there's no right. It's just different ways of writing out a story, right?
Yeah.
And lately I've been more drifting away from trying to make characters that are just straightforward nouns. Just that character is this noun, anger, or darkness, light, whatever, whichever thing, just this one adjective or noun, just this one word. Rather make the character a verb. Basically, you get to see him by his actions, not by the. You'll never know what to expect out of the character, and the character will take you by surprise the way people do in real life.
Yeah.
And it makes, aside from making the plot more engaging and more less predictable and more it also kind of teaches you things, and it opens up more space to be able to expose more things about life, rather than like just one-sided things, or always trying to make everything adapt to the situation. Like so if you have a story about a good guy and a villain, well, everything's always going to have to adapt to the good guy winning and the villain losing, and every situation is always going to have to readapt to that plot line. But in real life, things don't have to always readapt to those morals. So in a story, it might be more you just have more access, more space to work in.
It's a bigger canvas.
Definitely.
That you have to, and it's an open canvas.
It's an open canvas, yeah. Definitely.
I see exactly. I see exactly what you're saying. And going back to the writing, that's the beauty. That's the beauty of being able to be a writer, because you don't have to conform to the regular rules of reality. Like just because you live and breathe here as a normal human being, your character doesn't have to breathe. Hence a sci-fi movie, or
mm-hmm.
and you can let your imagination run wild, which it goes back to the conversation that me and Sean have had when it comes to comedy as well. It's kind of like an open canvas as well, and this is where also Sean says there has to be some reality to the comedy, because that's what makes it relatable to the audience.
Mm-hmm.
But on the same token, when you're that creativity kicks in you, your comedy doesn't always have to be real. Hence,
mm-hmm.
the bits that we've talked about. Certain comedians have bits that aren't true. Like, for example, Dave Chappelle talking about the baby in the neighborhood, Kevin Hart talking about the deer, bruh, in the middle of the highway. Like, that these are hypothetical situations that would never happen, but because of your creativity, you've made it funny anyway.
And if they weren't real, they wouldn't be funny. So here the question, I know they might not be true as like true events that happen, but they still meet up to, you're still saying it's the equation is still complete and it's still correct, or else you wouldn't get the laugh. If you went up there and you said 2 + 2 = 5, nobody would laugh. Like what I'm trying to say is that it still follows an order, a format. The joke is still real, and when somebody says a statement that is false, not hypothetical, but false, it's rejected.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I was actually thinking about while you were talking about that, man, the difficulty, and I think you come across it very rarely in literature, maybe a little bit more in movies because it's a visual medium, but the idea of a alien narrator, a character who you really can't think the way that they think. They are they are an alien mindset to probably the reader and the writer alike, but part of that is trying to build up some sort of logical structure so that you go like, oh, okay, I'll continue with this character, and see Hannibal Lecter being a great example. If you read Hannibal, the book Hannibal, it's mostly told from Lecter's point of view, and you kind of, at some point, you're going, of course you got to eat him. That just makes sense.
Yeah. It seems like it's the best option on the table at the time.
Yeah.
The
best option on the table.
Something that intrigues me with what you just said right now. So, and again, me and Sean have had this conversation before, and it's just the thing about me, man. I guess I'm just wired that way. But everything that I've ever done creatively, a lot of it, I never did it just because. What I mean is, through my creativity, whether it was comedy, whether it was music, when I used to do music, there was always my main point behind what I was creating was that I wanted to put a message behind it. Whether it would, like, well, of course, it was my point of view, right, on a certain thing, certain subject. But it was, I wanted to make sure that I put a message out there, and I wanted to make sure, no matter how distorted you saw it, because maybe you didn't agree with it, but I did want to put some kind of positivity behind it, right? But that's just as far as me. Everything I've ever done creatively, that's what I wanted to do, and that was my point. Because I wanted to, whoever listened to it, to whoever watched it, I want them to take something away and be like, oh, I learned that there, or I think this way because of this particular person painted this scenario this way. The reason I'm explaining that is it leads to my question. I do that with comedy as well. I mean, my main point, the main point for every comic is to punch that laugh out of you, because that's what you pay us for. You know what I'm saying? In a sense. So that's what we do. My question to you is, as far as the writing, when you write stuff and when you do these playwrights and stuff, do you do the same, or do you just straight out do it like a lot of other people? And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with it. Or do you straight out just do it because you want to be creative and it's what you like to do and it's fun and that's it? Or do you write your plays with the mindset of, I'm trying to expose this point out there for a reason, and I want to see if people can see it, and so on and so forth?
Yeah. Not everything I have written has been meant to be published and to be shared with other people, right? So I haven't necessarily written to change the world around me or anything like that, right? Sometimes it's like just straight up an expression. Maybe I'm just I'm diving into myself, diving into an experience. Does
it have anything to do with LSD or anything like that?
And sometimes that's where I was going next, man. You know, there's always an inspiration.
Let him work up to it,
right? Hey, I was getting there, right? No, but there's always an inspiration, definitely. Where this inspiration, what this inspiration is pushing me towards. Sometimes I'm trying to write a message, so like I've always been writing, man. So sometimes I was like, I wrote because I wanted to show my parents that I had this complaint. Boom, 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 boom. Sometimes I wrote because I saw that there was this certain problem in the world that everybody wrote about, and I had something to say about it too. Or I just wanted to tune in. It was like, well, I'm a writer. I should practice some writing. Everybody's writing about this. Let's write about it too. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. There's always been different things that trigger whatever thing I'm going to work on, right? Mm-hmm. The one thing that I strive at as I'm writing the work, once the inspiration already kicked in, one thing I strive at is at trying to make it more of a testimony, a statement, rather than an opinion, right? When I was a younger writer, I always wanted to express a point of view. And as my life moved on, sometimes I've noticed that some of these point of views would change, and I couldn't hold on to these pieces of writing as things that I believed in always, because they were so sort of biased. They were one-sided. They had a point of view.
Yeah.
So initially is the inspiration, but as I am writing out what I'm inspired to write out, I want to make it as least biased as I can possibly do it, and make it a testimony. This will assure me that as I'm writing it, I'm going through an experience that is keeping me close to things that are true, not necessarily things that are positive, just things that are true, things that are real. And it's also, if anybody does read it, whether I published it or somebody decides to sneak into my stuff and open it, they'll go through an experience that is true also, right? So that is what I strive at. As I'm writing it, to be. I was listening to this lady talking the other day, and she was telling a chisme, right?
Yeah.
That's what a writer is.
That means gossip, Sean.
Yeah, man, this person was saying a gossip, and we gotta she was saying it in a very biased way. Like it was like on this, and
just one-sided.
Was one-sided in my opinion. One thing we celebrate of writers is sometimes we celebrate the ability to be able to show you everybody's feelings, the bad guy's feelings, the good guy's feelings, everybody. Don't just give me the chisme. Now they do want a little bit of chisme. People do want a little, and I don't drift for that, right? But people do want stuff like, tell me who won, tell me who was getting fucked over and whatever, right? They want to make it sound like a chisme, but it's just when you're a writer, you're able to retell a story without putting too many of your opinions in it. Plato wrote about Socrates, and Plato did not believe in skepticism and all that stuff. Like Plato's philosophies were completely different from what Socrates was saying. Yet he was able to write about Socrates without putting too much of his ideas into Socrates' mouth. So he was able to show his teacher for what he really was, right? Not being like, well, I didn't like this about my teacher, so I'm going to write it this other way, right?
Yeah.
So it becomes a true state.
Yeah, it goes back to not being biased and making the story or whatever you're saying a gossip, and kind of giving your point of view, but not making it in a gossipy way. If that's a word or whatever. And
your point of view will be more not what you think should or shouldn't be done. It will be more like what you saw were the consequences of these things.
I was going to say it's probably suitable that you bring up the Socratic dialogues from Plato. Mm-hmm. The very essence of that, or at least to my interpretation, seems to be a statement of opinion followed by the revelation of ignorance or bias, and then restated in with that level of understanding, as you were talking earlier about going back and looking at pieces that you did as a younger man. I completely feel you. What I think you were speaking to is kind of the multiple levels of interpretation available by any piece of work. And I brought up this statement earlier, and actually I mentioned Jordan Peterson. We were talking earlier about Pinocchio, and I find a lot of the statements that come out of the man's mouth interesting, but one of them was, if the artist knows exactly what they're doing when they create a piece of work, then they've failed as an artist. And granted, that's a little bit harsh, and the man's not an artist himself, but the interpretation, the positive spin I walked away from with that was the idea of, he's specifically talking about the difference between propaganda and art. Propaganda, of course, being a vehicle to deliver a direct, solid, and incorruptible message, and art kind of being that medium of self-reflection, almost being able to look at it again, not being able to explain every aspect present in the piece. You know, you write something when you're younger and you go, why did I put the dog in there? I don't know. I like the dog. And then you come back and read it later and you go, oh, I was making a silent outcry as a young man for my need for dominance and yet love and support at the same time. Yeah. Okay,
so
sure.
You're able to find.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, keep going. Sorry, I kind of.
No, I find that very interesting. There are actually a lot of pieces that I started when I was, say, in my early 20s or so that I never got around to finishing because I came up to some point where I was like, I don't know what the next step is, and then I go back and read it as myself today, and I go, oh, I know where he was going with this.
Yeah. No. I remember what I was gonna say. You know, when you go into one thing I've explained before. When you think of an expert, right? Let's say you go into labyrinths and you're trying to find your way out of a labyrinth. The expert isn't the person who knows every labyrinth. There's not going to be a person.
You've
right?
run this one by me before, man. I like this.
The expert will be the person who knows that they can find their way out of a labyrinth, or that they know the tools to be able to find their way out of a labyrinth, but they don't necessarily know the labyrinth, right? They just know they have the tools. That's what makes a person an expert, right? You don't go into a story saying, I know the labyrinth. But the more professional you become as a writer, or the more expert you become as a writer, you're able to say, okay, I'm going into this labyrinth, and I don't know what the labyrinth looks like, but I know my tools, right? So as I mentioned earlier, to foil, if those are the tools you decide to use. And one thing to always remember, you know, sometimes a lot of writers want to get stuck in a style. Maybe they read a certain writer, they fall in love with the writer, they continuously read the writer, they don't read any other writer, and they just imitate that style, right? And they forget that writer was, that moment actually gave them a tool from the many, many tools they can use as a writer, right? You could when you're playing music, like you can continuously do the same thing, or you can discover, oh, I did that same thing, let me bring it back here, and then let me do something different over here on this other side, right? So you can say, I'm gonna be a horror writer, or I'm gonna write a story, and the moments that require horror, I'll use my skills in horror and bring that horror forward, right?
Yeah.
And you don't come in already knowing this is a horror labyrinth. No, I don't know where the labyrinth's gonna take me. Maybe it's gonna take me to a horror place.
But I'll eventually find out.
Find out, and when I get there, I know my tools. I've been prepared for this.
Gotcha.
Boom. Yes, and then
I wanted to go back and touch on a point you mentioned earlier about when you said that sometimes you don't feel like you write something and you put a message because you don't want to be biased, and because maybe that was your point of view then, and maybe your point of view changes. The thing that intrigued me about that was that you're right, because as a comic, like I find myself doing that as well. But the thing is, that was something that I found out is that that's not a bad thing. Like there's nothing wrong with
writing a message.
No. With your points of views changing. Like, okay. I'm going to give you the example with me. If you were to go back, first of all, I'm glad that you can't. But if you were to go back and listen to the shit that I wrote when I first came out, like as a comic, that shit was horrible, right? I'm not saying that my shit now is nowhere near Dave Chappelle or Richard Pryor or anything. But when I wrote at the beginning, I mean, it was horrible. But my point is that back then, that's where I was. And sometimes as an artist, going back to the open canvas that we play with, that we write on, that it's our playground in a sense. It's good to be able, I feel it's good to be able to go back and kind of yourself look at the evolution.
Yeah.
From where you were then to where you are now.
Definitely.
Now, my point with that, back to what you were saying about the point of view. Say that my point of view on this thing back then was here. I was stuck on red for the sake of the example.
Mm-hmm.
But then my point of view as I progressed, started believing in blue,
Mm-hmm.
right? So then it's okay to fall for you or the audience to follow through on the evolution of like okay, he believed in red, but now I see how it evolved and he believed
like,
in blue. That's what I meant by putting, when you write something, putting the message behind it, even if your point of view on the message that you put out before has changed, and now people see a different message with the new stuff that you put out. But I think it's good for people to see that side of you as an artist as well. That's why I was asking.
Yeah, no, and I do have writings that are opinions that are meant to say I have this certain thing I want to say, and those are mostly in poetry, not so much in my stories, right? Now so yes, I might change from red to blue. Now here's one interesting thing. I remember once reading that if, let's say, you believe in red and then you believe in blue, even though the color is different, you'll discover that a lot of the tendencies you had as you were believing in red bleeded into the way you act with blue, right? Kind of like when you speak a language, you'll realize that habits that you had in your previous language will bleed into your new language. Like when you want to say the word, like if you want to say Spider-Man, right? I once bought a toy car in Mexico with Spider-Man, and it had a letter E for a Spider-Man, right?
Yeah.
So
or a Sprite.
A Sprite, you know?
Yeah.
Those things.
That means Sprite, Sean. I love the fuck with him like
I don't have any white jokes right now.
I got a few written down somewhere.
No, but you know, like it bleeds in like a language. Your the way you believe your concepts. If you change, it bleeds in. So keeping that in mind, it all depends on what approach you want to have to things as a writer. One approach that has been introduced to me lately is the idea of don't write about the red, don't write about the blue. Try to get to the core of what was going on there during the switch, while you were believing, while you're red, while you're in blue. I remember once reading a book called the Religious Experience or something like that, and it was like, we're not going to study religion by studying the what's that word for studying religion? What's that word?
Theology.
Theology, yeah. We're not going to study the theology. Rather, we're going to study the psychology and the behavior. It was like a more like behavioral psychology on what is the religious experience, what is to be a religious person, right? So seeing like this, it's like, okay, I'm not going to see my theology. I'm not going to get lost in all these aspects about what I believe in. I'm going to see rather my experience and what I'm putting myself through and what I'm going through, and see like what's really at the core of it. If I take off all the other stuff, if I take off the color, you know, if I change the color to blue, to red, to orange, what remains, what tendencies are there? And those are the tendencies that are interesting to portray in your characters, because you get to see.
I like that.
You get to
see, like right now, just with what you're saying alone, because I'm a very visual person, and I listen to what you're saying with not only with a purpose but in depth, and like with what you're telling me in my head, I'm already painting a picture. So with what you're telling me, you're making me see a different angle of what I'm telling you, and I like that, which is one of the points that I was trying to make earlier as far as the creativity. But go ahead.
Yeah, no, and then it's and it's introduced to me also by a lot of in the last podcast, we talked about Game of Thrones. And, one thing that comes out a lot in Game of Thrones is the characters are at one point you see them as evil, at one point you feel sympathy for them, at one point you feel angry towards them, and the characters are always being displayed in a different way. So I recently read this book that it gave the message, but it didn't give the example of its own message. It told you, this is the message I'm giving you, but it's the story itself did not provide me with examples of that, right? It was a sort of Shannara. I think they read it to like teenagers, right? And in that story, when you touch the sword, it shows you your true self, right? So, for instance, let's say in this story, he is being helped by this guy who is que roba, right? He steals. And he's being helped by this guy, and he has like a very negative moral opinion of this guy, but he still accepts the guy's help.
Yeah.
And the sword makes him see that. And he touches the sword and he's like, I've been thinking this way of this guy, while at the same time Robert has taken his help. So it doesn't matter what you believe in. And I mean, it does, but getting to the core of it, and where and discovering your own contradictions, gets you to the core of who you really are. What's the real impulse that leads you through your situations?
And how would you? Because it sounds like, and there's nothing wrong with it, but because it sounds like we're like you said, we're getting into the psychology of it. Mm-hmm. So if you had to tell somebody or explain to somebody exactly that, like how do you, to a close-minded person, how would you explain that to try to make them understand that that's how you get to the core of that view or that situation? How would you do it?
That's a tough one, man. Well,
and that's the reason that I asked.
Yeah. Let me see, man. A person who is not open to, who is only wanting to see the opinions of people, and who is not open to trying to see people for their tendencies, rather only by their opinions and all that. I wouldn't try to get them to understand that.
So you're like, basically, you're a lost case. So basically,
it's not that they're a lost case, man. It's just that every person. How can I put this? Their own experience is aware of these facts. Not outwardly,
but remember that they're closed-minded. Mm-hmm. There's a reason as to why I'm asking you this, and I'm throwing this out there, and I'll tell you, because I'm not gonna bobble your brain too much, because I don't want to do that. But my point is, it falls back on the whole premise of this part of the conversation, which is creativity and the message that as creators we put out there, and then how the audience intakes them. So what I'm saying is, like, as a creative person, whether you want to or not, there is a message that you convey that you put out there, right? Mm-hmm. So what I'm saying is, when you write something, and I'm going to use your canvas per se, when you write something as a playwright, as a director, as a screenwriter, whatever, like there's that message that you put out, but you don't want to, number one, you would never want to convey a message to where you want to impact somebody negatively. And my point was that if you do impact somebody negatively, and they approach you, or they approach somebody else, and they're like, oh, well, this is what I got from this movie or this play that I saw, and who directed it and whatever. And they say, well, Seres directed it. Oh, well, this is what he believes, and he's pushing it on me or whatever. My whole point behind that is that, like, for example, when you convey those messages, and before anybody says anything, this is throwing mental health out the window. Like, then somebody picks up on those messages, and then, you know, you have people fucking shooting up movie theaters and and doing that type of stuff. And then you have the advocates saying, oh, well, it's because of that movie, you know, that was made because of this. If it wouldn't have been because of that, so on and so forth. Clearly, in a lot of cases, it has a lot to do with mental health. But I like that. That's a whole different side of it. What I'm leaning on is back to what you said about the psychology of it, and the message that as creators we are conveying and putting out. That's why I asked you if you had to change the mentality of somebody positively, like how would you approach with that message to that person? That's the reason. And also, just to tap that out, the reason that I'm asking is because me personally, as a comic, I've been approached by an audience member, and they told me, you know what, I don't feel I feel this certain way because of this thing that you said. So I feel that's not right. And they told me, you're putting this message out there, and it made me feel uncomfortable. I mean, I told them something. I'm not going to go into all of that, but I responded to them and so on and so forth. But I'm saying, I don't know if anybody's ever approached you about your plays or anything.
It hasn't happened that somebody kind of like feels a little negative about. It hasn't. I'm trying to think of an example. If anything, people have just been pissed at the amount of work they have to do when they work with me. You know? But that's it, man. I understand there's definitely an influence with everything. You know, inspiration starts by an influence. So you like something's kind of influencing you to. So obviously, there's going to be influence in what you write. Should you take any responsibility with that? Sure. If you're going to publish the work, you should definitely take into mind your audience. And if you have, there is times that propaganda is, I mean, here we make it sound ugly, propaganda, but there's times that you need to write and telling people like, hey, you all are being shitty to the Mexicans. What the fuck? And you know, and that's not. It might seem like propaganda. It might seem like bias,
but it's just a message that you're trying to.
It's a message, and it's a necessary message.
I'm totally behind that. Like, that's my whole point behind this whole thing that I'm telling you.
Just to be clear, since I've kind of introduced propaganda into the conversation, the way I've been kind of working with the idea recently is. All right, if anything is produced as a work of art, and you know it's called a work of art. If we're putting out a pamphlet with some cartoons in it, or you know a short piece or something like that, then by all means it only needs to exist within itself. But if you're putting something out as a work of art, if you can't remove it from that context and setting that it's in, and show it to somebody else and have them
understand it, engage.
Well, not even necessarily understand it, but have some means of interpreting it. I mean, if they look at it and they go, I don't get it.
Some sort of impression.
Yeah. There has to be something there inherent to itself. Kind of like we were talking, the idea of coming back to something as an older, more mature person, you're seeing different things within the piece. So that something that, you know, originally may have been intended specifically to convey this message, you know what I mean? It has life beyond that. If it doesn't have life beyond that, then it's firmly entrenched in the propaganda category. Yeah. Which, as you said, and as I said, if that's what it's intended to be, then by all means, let it live in that moment and do what it.
And and you can read a lot of, like, let's say I recently read a lot of Kipling.
Rudyard Kipling.
Yeah, Rudyard Kipling. And he talks a lot about India and when the English were in India and all that. And you could see that as propaganda, but it doesn't end up being propaganda, because right now with a lot of the things that are going on, I read it and I'm like, oh, this sort of reminds me of this. I see this message, and people throughout history will be able to see that, and it becomes a true message. That's what I meant, Now, I recently was talking to somebody, and he told me that there was a comedian who said, I don't know who the comedian was, maybe you guys know. He said, I learned one day that I'm not there to make people laugh. I'm giving them the opportunity to laugh.
It sounds familiar, but I couldn't put a name to it.
And so when it comes to influencing other people and how they react, through my story, yes, I'll give them an opportunity to connect to certain feelings. What they will take out of that feeling will belong to them alone, not to me at all whatsoever. Sometimes I get up on stage and I say, we're not here, guys, to escape. We're here to get inspired. And then the next person will get up and he'll say, hey, man, just like Seres said, we're here to escape.
Yeah. Here's a little example that I came across a while back I think you might appreciate. I'm a big fan of Stanley Kubrick's work, right? 2001, Clockwork Orange, the whole deal. And one of my favorite little fan-made documentaries was a piece that came out about 10 years ago called the Something Alchemy of 2001. And basically it was this guy breaking down the film 2001, completely ignoring the Arthur C. Clarke novel, but just breaking down the film as a symbolic representation of the alchemical formula for the perfect man, going through the trials,
And I haven't watched that movie, man. I haven't watched 2001.
Okay. It is what it is, man. As I was talking about with Ray on the last podcast we were doing, if you're a fan of kind of the subtle geekery of filmmaking, it's amazing, because they did things with miniatures and just camera angles that you're going, fuck, man. That's cool. You were talking about people being like, fuck, I didn't think we were going to have to work this much. I always got the impression that's what Kubrick inspired in his crews. Right. But anyway, so this guy made this entire documentary. I think he wrote a couple of books on it, the alchemical Kubrick and all this. And
cool.
And it was fascinating stuff, mainly because I'm a geek who's into alchemy and shit like that. Yeah. So the idea of, the trials of man, the Joseph Campbell, the warrior's journey, or however that goes.
Yeah, I think you told me about this in the past.
Well, okay. There is actually an interview with Kubrick from 1983 where they go, so that, you haven't seen 2001. At the end, he's an old man in a room by himself. And then the next scene, he's a space baby floating above Earth.
Okay, yeah.
And it's kind of like, what the fuck just happened? Uh-huh. And it, especially when you're some hippie out of your head on acid, you walk out of there going, it has a deeper meaning, man. But they're asking him, like, so what is that? What's that whole scene about? And he's like, oh, he's in an alien space zoo.
In an alien space zoo?
End of sentence. That's it. That's like, why was he in the room? Alien space zoo. So what happened at the end? They let him out of the alien space zoo. It's like, and if that statement comes out, gets made widely public, 20, 30 years earlier, an entire branch of interpretive,
yes.
Study, I guess, is just completely eliminated.
Yeah. No, and I think I get what you're saying. Like in the end, whatever he meant, I mean, there is what the author means is definitely there, and we can share it. Right. But what the audience will always take will always belong to the audience. Okay, what were you saying? Is that más o menos?
Yeah, that was pretty much it. It's like I'm definitely one for literal interpretation. If the author says this is what he meant, don't get me wrong. If he comes back, if he comes back 20 years later and decides, we've talked about Tolkien before, but it starts off as an attempt to build some Proto-European language, and eventually he's writing. You get to the Silmarillion, and he's rewriting the entire Western creation myth. Iluvatar as the stand-in for Yahweh and all of that. So, not only is it the reinterpretation of the artist, but beyond that, and granted, if the artist says it's so, it's so. Yeah. That doesn't mean we can't play around with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, and in the end, even what the artist said, even if the artist explains to you point by point by point, even there you will be reinterpreting those words in your own way, Mm-hmm. And you will be so let's say you talk to somebody. I had this conversation with somebody, and they said, "Well, the Joker in the Dark Knight movies, I don't think that Joker makes any sense. I don't think somebody that acts so sporadic and chaotic and lunatic could have the ability to coordinate all those crimes and all those attacks."
But you're talking about the Joker in the Dark Knight, right?
In the Dark Knight.
And who's this saying?
It's a friend I was talking to.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And he was just saying, okay, so I just don't think those two personalities go together. Somebody that can coordinate all that crime and somebody that's going all the time, right? Okay. Maybe that's not necessarily true. Maybe this person's opinion was wrong. But the movie did offer and the author can come in and say, what I meant to say was this. And in the end, this person might agree, I might not agree. It's not that everybody has their own point of view. But what I'm saying is that Dark Knight and that Joker opened the opportunity to think about that, right? It opened up that opportunity. The writer offered his arguments on it, and then it just moves on from that, and the reader will take home whatever he takes home. You have no control over it. You can wish that the reader will take certain things home, but and you can make it accessible to him.
And you're absolutely right.
Just kind of throw this out there, but the old example of what's Thomas Jefferson and the New Testament, where he went through the Gospels and cut out all the bits of supernatural stuff. So it's basically just Jesus walking around being a nice guy. Wow. And then I think he cut off Revelation at the end too. So no dragons and no, God the Father, but and very, very much of a shorter book. As far as reinterpretation, the audience can take whatever they want. Sorry,
I wouldn't want to read that one. Right?
No, and what I'm saying is you're absolutely right about that. And I've said this openly before at some of my shows. It's especially when the audience is not laughing, or I feel that I'm not getting the reaction that I'm trying to get out of them. What I've always said is the stuff that I say, you don't have to necessarily agree with. You know what I'm saying? But and even if you don't laugh, or if you don't laugh to the point that you're holding your stomach, my main point is that all I want to do is force a reaction out of you. Mm-hmm. And I think that as a creator or as a writer, that's what we want. Whether you agree with me or not, I just want to force a reaction out of you, even if you disagree with me. On the same token, I feel that as a performer, a writer, a comedian, whatever, if I got no reaction from you at all, if I get a dead just stare, and I've gotten those before, and it's uncomfortable as fuck. But if you have the whole audience, or the 10, 15 people, 20 people that you're performing for, and they're just kind of and that's all you get, then as a performer, I can say that you failed. Yeah. You know what I mean? But if even if you didn't agree with it and you didn't necessarily laugh, but I forced a reaction out of you, and I forced, like you were saying earlier, an opinion, Adam did my job. Yeah. You don't have to necessarily agree.
So it becomes
I'm going to take one little caveat with that. If they're not laughing, you didn't do your job. But that's the one bit where comedy gives you a lot of leeway. You're allowed to make, stick your foot in your mouth as much as you want. But yeah, man, I mean, you got to agree. At the end of the day, if they're not laughing, then we were talking about that the other day, man. Applause breaks are nice, but that basically means it wasn't funny enough to laugh. So
yeah. I see what you're saying.
To kind of go to what you were saying about the idea of kind of putting, because I mean, we're all aware there are tools that you can use to build tension, either in a narrative or in a moment. There's, tone of voice, facial expressions, body gestures, certain scenarios. Oh my God, is the puppy going to get run over? I was watching this new show with what's his name from Spicoli from Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Sean Penn. Mm-hmm. It's on a new Hulu show about space flight, and the first episode of any show is going to have its emotional. They want to kind of establish who you're supposed to feel sympathy for and all that stuff. Yeah. And they had a couple of cheese moments in there where it was like, I see where you could be going with this. I don't really, you fucking went there. God damn it. You know what I mean? Okay. And it's one of those things where if you set up those sympathetic emotional response moments and the audience kind of has already given you their trust or they're in that mood for it, they'll go with you. But if you hit too many of those in a row and you haven't kind of earned it, like the series ended up earning itself back. I think it's called The First. And the cheese was on. It was like, man, because they're already going like, this is going to be this kind of show. And it's like, and then they threw in a little bit of nuance, of detail, of world building. The characters are not as one-dimensional as they seemed when they almost set them up against like a diorama backdrop. You know what I mean? Okay. They are what they are. And then you kind of start to see dimension to them. Mm-hmm. And where I was going is those moments of like, you can force somebody into that moment, but one, if they see it coming, you're not going to get the response that you thought you were. And two, if you hit them with enough of those and they are in disagreement, say with the tone of it, I mean, we see that in conversations, man. We could be talking about the same exact facts, man. But if I sound like I'm agreeing with some point and you sound like you're disagreeing with another, we're not even having a conversation about the words and facts. We start having a conversation about the tone of the conversation.
But when it...
But I'm saying you can trigger that in people very easily.
And the only thing I was saying is, as in it relates to comedy. It's like the example that I used on the last podcast. It also depends, you as a performer, as far as your demeanor, the demeanor that you're using to deliver your material. Even when you're a playwright, your character needs to have a demeanor. If that demeanor is used properly for the occasion, the scene, the joke, the setup, you know what I'm saying? So if it is used properly, I feel, again, my personal opinion, that if it is used properly, even if you disagree with it, you're gonna get that laughter trigger. You're gonna get that reaction trigger that you want from the message that you're trying to deliver. As far as comedy, the example that I used on the other podcast, Gerard Carmichael, he has a very, very settled dude. He almost has a soothing voice. Like, I don't know if you've ever watched him perform. Gerard Carmichael.
No.
Okay. I can tell you just real quick, dude. He has this very calm, soothing voice. Like, if somebody was gonna tell you a story, like a bedtime story, that's the guy that you want.
And he's a comedian?
Yeah,
he's a famous comedian.
He's a famous
Is he the one that comes out with the cup of wine? Always?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, it's not.
That fucking sounds like Red Fox.
Oh, no, the whiskey. Some guy that comes out with a cup of whiskey and he's always talking all slow.
Ron White, maybe.
It might be Ron White.
I don't know their names.
No, Gerard Carmichael. He has like this very soothing. I swear, dude. Like, he's the guy that you want to tell you a bedtime story. Mm-hmm. Like, I feel that he has that kind of demeanor, dude. Like, that he'd be great at delivering.
Sleep.
Yeah. No. Like, he would deliver bad news in such a nice way that it wouldn't sound so, well, so he died? Well, it doesn't sound that bad. Like, he would make you feel, but it's that demeanor and the way that he delivers his punchlines and his jokes that even when you go, and the reason we brought him up the other day was because his comedy, dude, is fucking dark. Like he takes you to these dark places, but with that demeanor, and that's what makes him hilarious. Because and what makes it worse as far as his comedy is that his comedy is so dark, and he doesn't even cuss a lot, but it's just dark without cussing. And that was my other point, that you don't have to cut. It's not the cussing that makes your comedy dark. It's just the points that you make are the ones that it gets real dark, and he takes his audience to these dark places, but he kind of makes them feel okay. It's
like I had said, okay, so you want the audience will take their own meaning out of things, and you give them the opportunity, but you will only give them the opportunity if you are getting the reactions. If the reactions are not happening, the opportunity was never open to them.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you did fail, right? If you were gonna publish, if that was your goal, to write that for that, to create those to be able to reach other people, and so this one of the things that I learned a while back was something called like an insult to the reader. Not that you necessarily insult the reader, but you create a dilemma, a problem, a crisis within the work. So here you have a really calm guy who can deliver really bad news. Those two things contradict each other, and that's what engages you. Yeah, because you're seeing a crisis. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it is not that you're seeing things that are just completely off from each other. It's like, so these things don't even relate. No, they're things that are they're actually creating a crisis. They're not just opposites.
Yeah.
They're causing a crisis. And so you get engaged and you get to experience the work.
Yeah. And
you get to feel it.
He brings you into that world.
And the opportunity becomes open.
And he makes you feel comfortable. And the opportunity for the reaction, the trigger, the laughter is when it becomes yours. Like he has this great bit, and it's very short. But I guess maybe because I'm a comic and I analyze things, but I just think it's hilarious. Like he just says, it's very simple too. He says, like, I feel like I'm different from other people. I feel that there's certain people in this world that should not be allowed to have breakfast, because breakfast is your first meal of the day. The first meal of the day is supposed to give you the energy to get through your day. And he was like, unemployed people should not be allowed to have breakfast. Yeah. It's like, what the fuck do you need energy for if you're not doing shit? He's like, you're unemployed. And I just thought, like, I just thought it was hilarious. And then he used the same comparison with like homeless people. He was like, you're already homeless. He's like, your life is basically over. Like, see, and that's where he took it into like a darker turn. Yeah. But because he gained the audience trust, he kind of made them all feel it's okay to laugh. It's fine.
Yeah. No. And the comedian has a very different task from other people, right? From other types of arts. And the comedian tends to, we are all exposed by art. Art tends to like, oh, I see it, like it exposes certain things. Like I said, it gives you the opportunity. So it exposes. Sometimes you don't want the opportunity to have that feeling reemerge, Yeah. Man, I lost my train of thought. What had you said, dude? What the fuck, man? Shit.
Bringing them in, making them feel comfortable. What else did I say?
There is a thing with comedy, man, because any consolation you give to them has to be almost sideways, because you're not there. You're not there to go, this is all right. You're here to go, this is kind of fucked up, isn't it? Are we enjoying ourselves?
And okay, so this is just a question that just comes to mind right now. So I always bring the Joker in history, right? And the Joker, but how many people in the kingdom probably wanted to be Jokers, and why did that one guy got the job closest to the king to be the Joker, right? Now, I don't know. This just came to my head. I don't know what process there was. Like, but I'm guessing there was a certain quality if you were like the king's Joker or something, you know, like if you were that close or something, there had to be a certain type of quality for you to be like at court or something, for you to be like at a more fancier place telling jokes with these people. Does that make sense? I think a good king, and I would have wanted to be like, how do I put it? I don't know what culture it was that did this, that they would come back from war and they would have a hobo or somebody like sitting there with them, insulting them.
It's the Romans.
It was the Romans,
when
right?
they did the what is that called? Where they came back through the gates and they had the big parade. There would be somebody whispering "Memento Mori" in their ear.
Exactly. And so that's practically kind of what the Joker does, man. Like everybody's always up their own trip, man. And everybody's super proud and they become blind. People are blinded by their own confidence, by their own positivity, their own optimism, things like that. And so the comedian, like I said, offers the opportunity not only to laugh, but to laugh at yourself. And there is a big point of learning, man. Like if you're like, you know, you're trying to learn how to yo-yo. You're trying to fucking learn how to fucking yo-yo. And you keep making mistakes, man. Like you can have an attitude of just getting frustrated. Oh, I suck. But at the moment you're there to laugh at your mistakes, you're probably getting a little closer to learning, you know, like to understanding, you know, this is a mistake I'm making and I'm okay with this mistake. Let's correct the mistake. But if you're just like, oh shit, man, I'm here I go making more mistakes. Like, so laughing at your mistakes takes a lot. You know, and learning to laugh at your mistakes, you're more likely to be able to learn from them, or you're more likely to be able to, you know, not let them wait on you in an extra negative, unnecessary way. You know, you're able to laugh at it. You're able to take it lightheartedly. Yeah. And I think the comedian, I don't think people find it in themselves to do that. Yeah, comedians do it, you know, and comedians bring a lot of political arguments. You know, the world, like a country and a community is always very like set. This is what we are, and the comedian throughout history has always spoken up, has always laughed at it, and in all reality, it has pushed it forward.
Even you know? Chaplin.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the comedian's role, and that person will always that will always exist, man. That's why you know, having somebody laugh at you is not necessarily bullying. Bullying is when it doesn't help you grow. You know, when it's meant to put you completely down. You know, but que te dan carrilla. Is there a word for that in English? Que te dan carrilla, that's just, ya están haciendo carrilla. That's just, ¿cómo se dice? Like cagging stick, cagando palo, and things like that. You're getting reactions of people, and
when they, what he means is, when they treat you like the bitch of the group. No, that's what it is. Like, when you're with a group of friends and like somebody or that group of friends is trying to be a real dick with you, so they literally treat you like the bitch. Like they try to push you around, basically. Like, hey Sean, give me the fucking beer, bro. But they're not asking favorably. Right. They're kind of like, hey bitch, give me the beer, without saying hey bitch.
Well, it kind of goes to something I was bouncing around right now, man. I've been trying to get a hold of Sal Alansky's what is it, rule book for rebels or something like that. It was basically this guy who'd been a community organizer all through the 40s and 50s and 60s, and when he was getting towards the end of his life, like 3 years before he died, he sat down and wrote this book about basically not only how to go about it in a legal way so that you don't get yourself in trouble, but also how to play loose with the rules. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's good for the demonstrator organizers to get arrested because it like lets the rest of lets the flock know that the shepherds are, they're in this for real. They got some blood in the game. But one of the things he talks about is the power of, and a lot of people talk about this, but Alinsky seems to be the, you see this a lot in modern politics. And it's one of those things where, as a bit of an aside, we've come to this point of, I think we talked about this a little bit, the idea of the meta culture where we have social references and cultural references that are no longer attached to the thing that they originated from. One of my favorite examples is the word grok, which was from Robert Heinlein's 1961 Stranger in a Strange Land. The concept basically meant to drink fully. It was meant as a word from an alien language that, it was a substitute for love, to know, to think, to do. It was I grok fully. Okay. And I was going through a reasonably high-level philosophical conversation a while back on a message board, and I saw somebody use the word that I'm almost positive from like seeing the way they're speaking and the references they're using, they've never read that book. They have, but here's the thing, they use the word correctly. So it's one of those, you're throwing it out there. So I think Alinsky is one of these where people kind of take on these ideas without, and you hear it on, if you're talking to someone on the right side of politics, they throw out Alinsky's name with derision and this vile communist bastard. And then you look at the left and it's like, no, this is how you get things done on the organizational level. Both true, but he talks about the power of ridicule, the idea that if you make your opponent look foolish, then you undermine everything else they have to say. Because if you can get them on that one thing that is clearly foolish to everybody, then they never again get the opportunity to go, well, as a opinionated human being, with fully thought out ideas, here's what I think. It's like, nah, you're a fool, Yeah.
But that's
where I was going to say was, man, is the comic, if you're being genuine about it, I mean, don't be wrong. You can go out there and I've talked about this with political humor. You can go out there and say something that's going to have most of the crowd standing up, smiling, cheering. They're real happy to hear you say it. But you've lost that other part of the crowd because you've become a cheerleader for something they either don't understand or are antagonistic wholly towards, which is why the best political humor, at least for me, is the guy that, is saying something that, like, if somebody just walked up and said it to you in a reasonable voice, you'd be like, that's fucking ridiculous. Why would we ever do that? But we're on this hyperbolic level of ridiculousness and
it goes back to what we were saying earlier. It's not about making the joke that where you side with the red or you side with the blue. You get to see the political tendencies that are ridiculous in any scenario.
Yeah, best case scenario is the two people who completely disagree with each other philosophically are walking out, both laughing at the joke and trying to explain to each other why the other guy got it wrong.
Yeah, it's like,
exactly. No, you both got it right.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I was going to say. The comic has the jester, the traditional court jester. His job was to point out all the foibles, but make sure that nobody was mad enough to shank him once he walked out in the hallway.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit different now because, I mean, you're not necessarily going to get shanked walking out of an open mic, though. I think we've been to those places before. It's man, you can't just, look, you can't burst all the balloons. Otherwise, we're out of balloons and we're free falling back to the ground very quickly.
So there's a subtlety to everything, Yeah. And
I think it's just to add to that. I mean, I agree with most of what you both said, but to add to that, you're kind of saying being able to find the balance, basically the gray area per se.
Mm-hmm.
Don't pick fights, really.
Yeah,
I mean, I think that could get misinterpreted as well, but generally, don't pick fights.
And I'm not really saying gray areas like what everybody agrees on and everybody disagrees on. More like what tendencies are actually there in the gray area of tendencies, but not the opinion. I'm talking more of in the behavioral aspect. not finding a gray area in what they think, not finding a gray area in like, you don't say this person is how do I put it? This person's lying about this thing. This person's lying about this other thing. But there is here a little gray area of truth between both lies. No, the gray area is that they were both lying. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
And so you poke on that. That's what you pick on. I don't know if that made any sense.
No. I was going to say we could even go back to the example you used earlier of stock characters in foible, where something like a character piece is more along the lines of stacking up those stock characters on top of each other in the same individual, and then the foil being the interplay of, you know,
of those things.
What the character says as opposed to what the character does, and
exactly,
and the exceptions that the character might make in whatever, you know, situation.
Yeah. And that's how you would go about going back to that. That's how you would go about, I think, about starting up creating a character to create a very, very like engaging story that is very intriguing, very full of like, oh man, you know, that's the best way to tackle your characters, right? Yeah. And your plot lines too, man. Like the way you could create several stock aspects that are foils to each other in the character, you can create that in the plot, you can create that in the narrative, you can create that through the music, and you just layer, you know what I'm saying?
That's what I was gonna say. Whether, how can I say this? Whether it's a scene that you're writing, whether it's a premise to a joke, I feel that whatever the case is between the two, the best way and the best material is layered. When there's layers to a scene, when there's layers to a character that your audience has to like peel back, I think it's what makes for best entertainment. Like, but then on the comedy side of it, it kind of sometimes it can backfire, because if you're not, and we talked about this on the last podcast, if you don't, in comedy, if you don't cater to your audience, you can lose them.
It happens the same in writing.
And that's the fine line between like keeping the connection with your audience, because we talked about it on the other podcast, keeping the connection with your audience or losing it. And then again, as far as comedy, because getting it is hard, keeping it is harder, but I feel that losing it and getting it again is the hardest. Because I feel that once you lose them, honestly, not unless you're very good at what you do, it is really hard to bring them back. But I feel that way. If you're not really good at it, once you lost them, you lost them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's always like losing that connection that you fear most as a creator.
I feel that you know, when as you layer things, something might become so absolutely abstract that only you understand it. So full of layers that only you get how those things connect, and you cannot connect to the audience, right? So your layers, if your goal is to connect with people, to reach out, then your layers should benefit that purpose, right? So if your layers are creating an abstraction, unless it's because it all depends on what you're trying to write, because I've written a piece that was very abstract in the past, and a lot of people told me, man, can you write it a little less abstract, right? And I was like, no, because of you going through this is kind of what the story was aiming at, right? This is part of the experience. Like I said, the opportunities, this is opening an opportunity for you to deconstruct a piece, right? And to deconstruct a piece that was completely meant to be deconstructed, and it was never going to be plainly in sight for you, right? So there I wrote it with that purpose. So if that was my purpose, boom, that's fine. That was my purpose, right? Since the beginning, that was always my purpose. Now, but if I create a story that is so abstract and then people tell me I don't get it, and the abstraction is not created because you want to incite in them the opportunity for them to investigate, and you tell them, well, I don't care if you don't understand it, that's just the way it is. Or why did you show it to me? That's
a good way to put it. That's a good way. That's funny.
So if your goal is to show it to them, yeah, you can make it abstract and everything, but make it a journey. Abstraction and all these layers, they should be a journey, not some distance you create that you're just putting that distance because you're an asshole or whatever. Like it should be a journey that you're taking the person. Like it's a badass walk you're gonna take with them as they read.
Sometimes they do film specifically. You don't see this very much with books, though. Occasionally, with some newer authors that are using, say, community forums as their test audience, you might get a little bit more of this. But every time I hear that a film had its ending, I mean, not some scene within it was cut out, but they showed it to a test audience and they decided they were going to change the ending. It's like, how? Why? I mean, clearly you failed at some point to make the movie. I mean, if you don't justify the ending, then maybe
changed. It's like, wow, you just you pretty much changed like the premise of the story.
It's like they're dead. Wait, no, they're alive. Okay. But yeah, there is something. I mean, if you're in the editorial phase where you're kind of, this is the rough draft. Take a look at it. Tell me what you think. Which I'm sure you've run into that. There are a couple people that are a little bit too precious about their own work.
No. But
I know this is the rough draft. It's in pencil, asshole. You can change it.
Yeah. No, recently, right now, I've been writing a story that I've been struggling with I'm tired of it, man. Like I hate it because I think I am yet gonna attempt another rewrite, right? And I'm already sick and tired of this story, right? But the story itself, I know what it can do, and it's not accomplishing it yet, right? It accomplishing it is in some areas. So, in this story, I have a character who is buried alive, and then he is unburied in a very ridiculous, funny way. He stole he took a candy from a kid that was his student. The kid wants his candy back, so he goes and unburies the body, and boom, he saved the teacher, right? And then
must have had a very dark childhood. I'm talking about you.
Nah.
Give me my mazapan back.
No, I think there was a light bulb in that closet.
All I know is, man, I have to stay acquainted with you long enough for you to actually write that comic book about the
the riff-off. Yeah. Well, I'll get to it, man. And that one, it's because, man, oh God, that one's hard. But okay, anyways,
that one was pretty complicated the first time you told it to me, and then like the next time I'd talk to you, you were like, no, I had new ideas, and it's like, Jesus.
No, that's the problem with that story. It's you have that story has a format, but it needs more expertise on how to tackle that format. The format is there. I couldn't. It's like you're given a car that you don't know how to drive, but you have the car.
Well, this is kind of the inverse of what we were talking about earlier about going back and finding older pieces where you're like, Jesus, I can't believe I wrote that. Mm-hmm. Occasionally you go back and you find pieces where you go, oh, I didn't have the tools to do this yet. Yeah. Like, I got these tools now, man. They're in the back. Let's work on this shit.
No, and so basically, okay, so, and you'll make changes, but the changes are still, so you could, in this story originally, after the guy got unburied, there was this little girl that was manipulating him and he turned into a ghost for the school. Boom, I deleted all of that. So I deleted my ending. And I brought in a new ending. but I always kept in mind, where is the story leading? What are the things? I hate that I keep going back to the thing of opportunity. In this thing, the one thing that gets touched, for instance, in this story is, you don't know what you have until you lose it. So the kid's candy was a gift from his mother, and he's arguing to his friend, you don't know what you have until you lose it. This candy is meaningful to me. It's not just another candy. I lost my mom. That's why this means. And the guy that's buried under it, well, he died, so he lost life, and he comes back. Yeah. He's like, shoot, man, I needed to value all of this. And so you get the overall idea that you get is value what you have, right? And as I'm going through it right now, I'm like, well, you know what? I'm making this guy a very bitter character who's just bitter at the end of his life. But you know what? That doesn't seem to completely open up the opportunity for the audience to feel to feel the urgency to value their things. They just feel that it's a bitter guy. Well, it's too bad for him. So the opportunity wasn't opened. I didn't achieve it. So I have to go back in there and see what I need to do with that character, and maybe completely change that character to where he's going through it's just another character, but this new character I create offers the opportunity better for you to feel the urgency to value these things. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So as I move across my story, I can make drastic changes that are still in focus with as you said, the reactions I'm trying to create if it's meant to reach people. You know? Yeah.
Real quick, something I wanted to ask you in regards to the whole writing, but this is kind of a little different from what we're talking about. And I'm just gonna say it, and then you go off whatever comes to mind and how you deal with it.
Sex. I'm just kidding. Slippery.
Writer's block.
Writer's block. That's all I get. Writer's block. Shit.
Well, what I mean. This is what I mean.
He was giving you the opportunity to.
Yeah, that's what he did, man. I don't know if it's the opportunity to talk about writer's block or like learning to be put on the spot.
No. Writer's block. How do you deal with it?
Look, so look, shit, man, I got this. I unblock it. No, I'm kidding. No, I my daddy's also a writer, and he's not a published writer, but he's written all his life, and he has plenty to say about writing. And one thing that he told me is he calls it a forced break, and he thinks it happens with everything. Where he actually uses this example. I'll go ahead and say it with talking to chicks and getting and going out there flirting and everything, right? Yeah. Okay, he would say that he would like score a lot of chicks, and then for a certain period, like everybody was rejecting him, right?
Yeah.
And he almost felt that it was the same thing as a writer's block, right?
Yeah.
He would call it a forced break. It's like, I just got so up my head about what I thought is the right way to approach a girl that I started approaching all girls like that.
Yeah.
And I stopped learning how to approach a girl. And boom, now none of them talk to me because I in my head thought I knew how to talk to all of them. So now I got to take a little break and remember again that I don't know everything, and once again start fresh, right? So that's the way the writer's block works, man. Like you it's a forced break. You are saturated with the previous work that you've been doing, right? And it's like a full cup of water, like it's full, and you're gonna like just let it empty out again so that you can start fresh again, start filling it up with new ideas, start your work again, right? A writer's block is not a thing that should frustrate you. It should be an indication for you.
I beg to differ.
If you want to get frustrated, yeah. But we were saying the comedian, man, laugh at your frustration, make fun of your writer's block, and understand that that it's so ridiculous. It's gonna swing. It's gonna be over in any minute. You know, it doesn't have the power to hold you there. It's as weak as anything else, and so it shouldn't frustrate you. Rather use that energy of frustration to re-inspire yourself. Go have a smoke or go take a walk. Don't try to only find the way out of the block in front of the page, but rather go live life. Go do the first thing that inspired you to become a writer. Go just be a human, like just go be yourself. You know what I'm saying? And then
so what I'm getting at, and because I asked you that question because I'm intrigued by what you had to say, but I also asked you that question because I know some listeners that do actually listen to us, and I've had conversations where some of them want to start writing, whether it be I know one of them off the bat, he wants to write. His biggest dream was he wants to write before he dies one big script that he can shop. You know what I'm saying? That's his dream. I have somebody else that wants to do comedy, and excuse me. The reason that I ask you is because they feel that just because they can't write, or they can't do this, or they can't do that, or they tried to write and they hit that wall, it's like, maybe I'm not that good of a writer. And I tell them that it's not true. So back to what you were saying, what I wanted to point out, something that I want to make clear for the listeners, is you're basically saying when you hit that wall, long story short, go out and explore, experience, and live. Yeah. Basically. And then come back to that pen and paper. Yeah. And write again, and it'll flow again. Yeah.
And for beginning writers like that want to write a full script, and like the guy that you mentioned, what I would say to him is don't start on the script. Like, don't make the script the thing you practice on. Yeah. Do your practice work.
Thank you, man. That's exactly what I told him. Of course, I'm not a screenwriter. I'm a set writer. I write jokes. Damn it, that's what I do. Yeah. But I told them that's exactly what I said. You don't want to write your practice. You don't want to write the first thing that comes to your mind and make that your script. Yeah. I told them what you want to do, get a page and start writing. Just write anything. Yeah. You write 3-4 pages until you get tired, whatever. Then you take those 2, 3, 4 pages that you wrote and read it, go over it. And if you find one line that you like, one line that hits you in the face, you take that.
That's what you keep. That's what. Even if you wrote 1,000 words and you only keep that one phrase.
Exactly. And I tell them, you take that and you put that aside. You put that in a box or whatever. Yeah. And don't let the 4 pages that you wrote be your frustration and be like, shit, I wrote 4 pages, spent 4 hours just for the sake of the example, and I got one line. And I told them, dude, as a comic, you know how many times I've written 4 pages of material and I didn't use any of it but one line, and it took me 4 pages to get that one line, but that line was gold. Yeah, I was like that's what I'm telling you. When you write your script, do that, write, and then you're gonna find that one piece, that one paragraph that you can use.
And then eventually with time they'll come quicker. They'll come sooner.
No, and then what I related to them was that's why writing, screenwriting, anything creative. That's why I tell everybody, anything creative, whether it be comedy, screenwriting, playwriting, you have to do it if you love it. because if you don't, you're gonna drive yourself crazy.
Yeah.
Because it's just, you're, like I said, you're gonna go crazy. You're gonna write page after page after page. Sometimes you're not gonna come up with shit, and you're gonna feel like those 4 hours that you spent writing and you came up with nothing, like it was a waste. And honestly, yeah, but we do it because that's what we love to do. We love to create, and so on and so forth.
Or you can either spend the 4 hours digging through the grunt work that eventually leads you to some sort of creative process, or you spend those 4 hours trying to distract yourself from the urge to dig into the grunt work that'll lead you to the creative process.
Yeah.
And both will drive you mad, but one is at least productive in the end.
Yeah, exactly. And I told them that's what you have to do. And then I led into that part of the conversation where I told them you have to be able to do that, and don't let your rough draft, I don't remember the exact word I used, but don't let the first thing you write be part of your script.
Yeah.
And then what I described to him, and then he's like, well, how do I know if it's good? If what I chose to start writing my script is good? And I told him that's the beauty of writing, that you'll never know until you actually put it, put it together. And that's the risk that you're gonna have to be willing to take. Yeah. And I tell him, I was like, I don't mean to burst your bubble, but if you're not willing to take that risk, then you honestly don't have any business writing, because it's a risk. You're never gonna know that I wrote this, it's gonna work. It's a gamble that you do.
And it's a risk, and I agree, it's a risk, and it takes time. It's definitely a good journey, and I think I do invite people to open up themselves to the journey, not to publishing the next bestseller. No, just writing something, and to just when you're a kid, you learn how to use your feet, you learn how to walk. You learning how to use your words, man. Writing will help. Writing eventually will help you, whether you're a store manager or you're a lawyer or you're a doctor or you're whatever. Writing and reading will essentially help you organize your thoughts and all that, and become more fluent and quicker at expressing yourself. So even if you don't want to become a writer, I do open the invitation to everybody, but with the warning, definitely, that it is something that requires care, passion, attention, time, and if you're not willing to put all those things, it's not that it's not for you. I would really say that you're missing out on an interesting experience. And I don't want to say I would like to force it on everybody. If you don't want to write, don't write. Yet I'm not going to deny that I would feel that you would, that they'll find something good in writing a poem and just scribbling something down.
Who was it? There was it's a famous comedian. He said, he's a real big famous comedian.
Chabelo.
Somebody asked him that question. Because he was explaining to somebody, like he took the time, and that's why he was pissed explaining. Because he said, I took the liberty and the time of explaining to this new person the writing process of what works for me to make my material work, to the gambles I take. I explained everything. And then he got pissed off because this person told him, so what is it? Because it's not that he wasn't getting it. It's just he felt that he wasn't believing the advice that he was giving him, right?
Yeah.
So he came back with the question of, so what is it that you want me to do? That's what he asked. But he meant it as far as writing. Right. And he said that he got pissed off and he told him, he was like, you know what, dude, at the end of the day, I don't fucking want you to do anything. Don't do anything. Because his point was, if you have to ask that question,
Yeah.
it's because it's just not in you to write.
Yeah, and
Like,
nomás me estás chingando. So.
And it's not in you. And I say this a lot, and I sound like a freaking broken record, but it's like that's why I hate people that fucking tell me, because they do tell me, and it hurts the fuck out of me, dude, when they tell me, oh, well, how hard can it be to go up and do a couple jokes? Right, show me how it's done. Here, try it. See how that work out for you. Because they don't understand. Same thing with playwriting. Same thing when you screenwrite. Like it's not just like, not unless you're Steven Spielberg. I don't think somebody can just sit down and you're gonna write a masterpiece on your first draft.
Well, not even Steven Spielberg, man.
You know what I'm saying? but I mean, the reason that I use him is because again, from an audience point of view, from a fan myself, it feels like this dude just sits down and like magic comes out. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's how I feel when I watch his movies, when the shit that he's written and stuff like that. Like, that's what it feels like.
Have you seen the it's a shitty example. Have you guys seen the latest the Solo movie?
Not yet.
No. Okay.
Wait, hold on. What Solo movie?
The Star Wars one, the newer one.
Oh no.
So he wants to join these bounty hunters, and the bounty hunters are like, "Nah, forget it, kid. You're not coming with us." And then he's like, "Oh well, I'm gonna tell the general over there that you guys are really bounty hunters." "Oh, is that what you're gonna do?" "Hey, general, this kid is a deserter, blah, 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 blah. Don't believe anything he says." And they lock him up, right? Okay. They lock him up, and he, to be attacked by a monster, it ends up being Chewbacca, right? But then he goes and he sees he's going to escape with the bounty hunters, and he keeps telling Chewbacca, "I have some really good friends." And he goes, and you're thinking over here, dude, what are you saying, really good friends? The bounty hunters are going to leave you behind. They already did this to you. And then he goes with the bounty hunters, and the bounty hunters are like, "Hey man, you know what? This kid's starting to grow on me. Let's bring him in." And they have their little argument, and then they bring him in. Okay. But he proved himself that he would be able, that like at that moment, dude, he was calling them good friends. It almost became certain they're for sure going to take me with them. Yeah. Because look at all the shit I just went through.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So, with writing, man, like if you're gonna like, let's say, work with another writer, and let's say do a certain, like an apprenticeship or something with another writer, the other writer is gonna want to see your effort. The other writer, the writer who you're going into the apprenticeship with, will want to see you solving your own situations. That will show him your own potential. That'll show him your potential, you know? So the kid comes up and he says, "How do I write? But what do you want me to do? But how do I do it?" Dude, híjole, man, like in this life, I'm figuring out what I need to do. So I need you to figure out what you need to do. And I'm gonna help you in some things. I'm gonna do adjustments. But basically, yeah, it doesn't come just free, and I would understand the frustration of the other guy. Now, I don't want to close myself up. I think art is available to everybody, and it doesn't have to accommodate to a general consensus for it to be valuable.
Yeah.
Now, there is, like I said, the bias. There might be something that does not accommodate to like the status quo, or like how things are generally written. But it's very truthful, it's very honest, and it's never published. Still a badass piece of writing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, yeah, man, like it takes effort, it takes time, and I would understand that guy's frustration to having somebody not wanting to take the initiative as an artist, you know,
yeah,
into something you're saying that you
because it's another thing, man. Like when you're a writer, there's no, like you said earlier, there's no right or wrong answer when it comes to writing or creating on your canvas. So writing, yeah, you can go to school, you can major in creative writing, but the fact of the matter is there's nobody can teach you to write a masterpiece.
Yeah.
I feel that that's
Nobody can
something.
teach you.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that's something that either you're gonna apply to yourself, and you're gonna apply, because I feel that creativity for everybody is a seasoning. You're a creative writer. Sean's a creative writer. I'm a creative writer. It's what we do. But my creative writing is different from yours. My creative writing is different from his.
Yeah.
So it's the seasoning. It's just it's a different taste.
Mm-hmm.
So I can teach you what I know, but it doesn't mean that it's gonna impact you the same way.
Yeah.
Because we're all different. You have to apply your twist on it. And if you don't have that, not only the initiative, but if you don't have that creativity that comes from you, then
you're really far away from.
Yeah, you're far away from, and that's where the love for it needs to come. Like you need to love this if you really want to.
And you cannot teach somebody to love something.
Exactly. Well, I can.
I was listening to an interesting conversation a while back, and a guy was putting forth the idea of more and more, say, just in our culture as it stands, the society that we live in, you have to be able to adapt to novel situations. You don't just get to, go through school and then get the job at the factory and then work there until your hips give out and then you live on retirement and raise your grandkids. It's like, nope, you got to be figuring out new shit the whole step of the way.
Yeah.
And his dilemma was basically, how do you teach how does a self-taught teacher pass that information along to a student? How do you teach the new self-taught?
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? And it comes down a lot, I think, to giving.
You can.
Have you seen the movie Dead Poets Society?
Yeah.
With Robin Williams? At the very beginning, have you seen that movie?
Mm-hmm.
At the very beginning, they're going to read a book, and it's like an instruction, like a very detailed instruction on how to write poetry. And then he tells them all, rip out the page. And that's how he gets them to start thinking for themselves. He invites them to not go by the interpretation the book is saying, and to actually even have the courage to completely rip it out of the book and say, I'm going to dismiss this. I know it came from school authority. I don't care. I'm going to define what is poetry. Right, and I'm going to go through the journey of writing poetry and discovering poetry.
The bit they leave out of that story is, a couple years later when one of them has actually managed to go a little bit farther down the path, and they go, I better go back and reread some of those books just to make sure I didn't miss anything.
Reread what?
Reread all the stuff I skipped over.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that's...
No, it is good to expose yourselves to information, so you shouldn't not read, right? So don't rip out the page. Read it. But don't give into it. Don't take everything as believed. Criticize it. Carry a constructive critique of even things that are coming from masterful places. Like even if a teacher gives you something, doesn't mean it's gonna be completely true and completely right in every situation. So you deconstruct it, you analyze it, you criticize it, and that's how you know you're thinking for yourself. You cannot teach that. But as I said earlier, the book Sword of Shannara, it shows me, if I touch this sword, it's going to show me how much of a hypocrite I've been. But the story itself was good guys versus evil guys, the regular love. Like the story did not in any way show me that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And the only example it has was with the ratero. So you show it by example.
Yeah.
Most at its biggest thing, you just be yourself. You just do it. And the apprentice has the impulse and the love and the passion. Since it's not something you can teach, the other person just figures it out. But like you said, they figure it out by putting their thought and their touch into it. But they have to see it.
But they have to see it.
There's a quote, I don't remember where this came from, but I know I've heard it passed around a couple of different conversations. style is failed technique. Like you can walk them through the steps, but at some point they're going to deviate either through misunderstanding or through going, wait, I think I can do it better.
And then they develop a style.
Right.
Yeah. Right. It makes all the sense in the world. That's what it is, man. And
I think that's where your analogy as far as like spice and seasoning come in, is it's the little things that you decide to pick up and discard at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
my characters are all bastards, but they're nice to puppies. Actually, man, if you want to go ahead and wrap up a little bit, man.
We wrap it up. We take a break. Wrap it up. Which one is it?
we can wrap.
If you need to go right now, by all means, go, man. And we'll.
No, we can wrap up. I'm good.
No, you can go.
All right. I'll be right back. You guys say the best things about me.
We can.
Only nice things to say about you, sir.
Damage
they're not true.
All right, so let's see. Coming up, the next episode we have after this is going to be the one from the fundraiser, and then starting next week we have a musician. I'm trying to remember.
Let me look at my.
If you don't know it off the top of your head,
this is gonna stay. We're keeping this segment of the.
Oh, and I take it back. Actually, the next episode we have is going to be with Looper and Sonia, I believe.
Yeah, you're right.
So we'll get some funny people in here, tell a couple of dirty jokes and whatnot.
Something like that. You're keeping this part of the podcast, right?
Yeah. I'm just gonna let it run. I assume he's not going to be in there for too long.
Yeah. No, I was saying because we can kind of take this part to practice our kind of our intermission advertising, which is what you were doing now.
More or less, I was just kind of trying to run over the schedule. I know the calendar's become a little bit convoluted here in the last week.
Oh no, we good. I feel that we have it perfect the way we got it down and everything. But yeah, man, we this is the only week where we're recording 4 episodes.
Fingers crossed, knock on wood.
Hard, man.
Shit, it's a shitload of work. Well, he does most of the hard work. I just run after
man, you do
people.
some hard interview questions, man. Congratulations on that.
I'm not
Explain it to me.
I'm not trying to be. First of all, man, I'm offended. I don't like when people take this as an interview because I don't want to scare them away. It's
no, I didn't say you were interviewing me.
That's kind of
don't
what
pay attention to this list of questions I have here.
Shit.
No, it's not an interview, but it's more like
It's I tell people, man, because I tried having a nurse to come on, but I think I scared her away because I gave her the impression that it was kind of like a fucking interview scenario, you know?
Yeah.
But I told her, I was like, just think about it as a conversation with that you would have with a friend, and just add microphones. That's all.
Well, man, it does feel kind of like an interview, and you got hired. I'm just kidding.
Wait, if it was, it's you that we're interviewing.
Shit. That don't make sense. That don't make sense.
Another bit of insulation that comedy gives us is you can 9 times out of 10, you can assume if we're bringing you in here and you have a specialty of expertise, then you know more than we do. So it's, don't get me wrong. That's always fun when somebody starts going, now what it really means. And you go, nah, I've read that book, motherfucker. I know you're wrong.
I know, man. That's the only problem I have with podcasts. I got to be like, don't even say the name of the author, man. I don't even know how.
I read one time
that...
no, and that's the reason as into why a lot of the times the people that we do bring, like we it's like I tell everybody, because I've had people approach me. It's like, hey man, can I be on your podcast? But they don't really, and I mean this literally, like they don't do anything. And I've had made it clear before I started this whole podcast project that I wanted to bring on. I did it because of comedy, number one, but I also, outside of comedy,
local art.
I wanted to bring in local art to give a platform for little people like us that don't have a voice. Like we can't go to radio. And I don't really care because a lot of the shit that we say would not be played on radio anyway. So that's why we created this. Yeah. So I wanted some kind of creativity. That's why I expanded it to like poets, artists, bands, comedians for our local talent. Yeah. Or local business owners. But it goes a lot to the credibility. So that's the reason as to why when we bring on a poet, it's a poet. It's what they do, and it's why they're here. It's a comedian, so on and so forth. Like I can't just bring somebody that doesn't do anything on the creative side just because
you need a brain that's bouncing.
Just because they're my friend and shit.
This is Billy. He plays video games.
Kind of like that. This is Frank, and Frank likes to drink.
No, and I like this idea, man. You know, I like that there's an archive being created to where we can learn about the local artists. You know, I always think I had this poster where it was all the rock and roll artists, right? So like I don't know how many of them. And I was like, I'm gonna make one with just Valley artists. It's hilarious, right? But that's kind of what this is, man. It's an archive. It's an aspect.
First of all, thank you for thinking so low of us, because we're not iconic. We're not iconic. Because I heard the last thing that you said. That you said it's kind of crazy, right? Like, oh, we're not worthy of a fucking...
You're right, bro. You're right. Nah, that's my own lack of confidence. You're right, man.
I'm just picturing somebody looking at the poster and going, who are all these jackasses next to Freddie Fender?
Right? Next to right. Nah, dude, but no, dude, this is a badass idea, and I'm glad you guys have it going. And I hope the people who listen to us,
all 12 of them.
Yeah, I mean, what we were saying earlier about the writer's block being something that happens because you're saturated with over information. You don't let new information in.
Or sometimes no information.
Yeah. Well, you have no information, but maybe because you're...
The reason I said that is not to be sarcastic, because of the fact that that's happened to me. Like I've gone blank.
Yeah, just completely blank.
Yeah, I've gone completely blank, and I've gone completely blank for hours. So where I come back 2 hours later, and it's like,
no, man, I don't shut up, dude. I never go blank. Nah, I forget what I'm talking about. But I'm not too sure if I go blank. No, dude, but there is what I was trying to say is that there's no artistic block here in the Valley. Ideas are flowing, so they should definitely be shared. And they shouldn't only be shared in like places where you go and you check out a local artist. Oh, cool, man, that was an open mic. Let's get out of here. Okay. They should be like shared like anything else. Like the way you would share any good piece of art that you enjoy. Also share local art, man, and let people know about it.
Also because I feel that the Valley of all places needs something like this. And I didn't mean to be, again, sarcastic with what I said earlier, but a lot of people, dude, there is talented people here. There's very talented people here. And again, I mean when I say this, like you're one of them. Like when I saw what you did, when I saw what you do, what you actually do creatively, like you have a talent. And we unfortunately,
you've only heard one poem.
We couldn't we can't just walk in to a radio station and be like, hey man, like I have this. Can you play it for me? Can you know what I mean? Like you because, and I get it. The corporate world, business spins. I know how that shit works.
But in all reality, man, where there's material, there's money. So the people who are looking for money, there's material here in the Valley, and there's not enough money going into the arts. A lot of people are having to do things for free in order to gain experience.
You don't need to tell me that.
and people hire you and pay you with experience. Yeah. And then people who have more experience and who who charge are forced to lower their prices because all these young people are getting hired for free. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I'm laughing because what I was going to say was, you don't know how many times I've been paid with magic beans. You know?
Yeah, man, for real, just with magic beans. Yeah, man. And so there needs to be a realization of the potential that there is for art, and art makes a place richer. It makes the people. It creates for a brighter atmosphere. It creates a better place, and so I think there's a lot of art here. As time has progressed, it has become more accessible and more open for people to have access here in the Valley to be able to present their artwork. Before it was even worse. You know what I'm saying? So now it's starting to pick up more. There's more opportunities. It needs to keep going. But one thing that needs to happen is we see a piece of work, we have to share it. We have to love what we're doing here. Just like us artists love this piece of work and we work so hard at it, us as a community, we gotta love what we're doing as an artistic community and push it forward. Not just focus on our art alone, like you guys are doing. You guys are inviting other people. And so the community is working. You know what I'm saying? Exactly. And you have your comedy that you do and everything, but we're invited here.
And if this was just me and Freddy, this would have ended in a fist fight a long time ago.
A long time.
What type of fist fight, man? Not a stink fist fight. I'm just kidding. So horrible joke, man. See, I'm not a comedian, man.
Mall rats for the win, man.
Oh, what?
Mall rats for the win.
Mall rats for the win.
That's the one where he sticks his hand in his ass crack and then offers the chocolate pretzel to the guy.
Wow, what is that from?
It's Mall Rats. Kevin Smith.
Cool.
But to what you're saying, man, and I've hammered Sean with this shit over the head, like. I keep telling him, and I know I know he feels a certain way because I can see it when I tell him. But it's like I tell him all the time. I was like, dude, if we are really serious about what we're doing in regards to this, you know what I'm saying? Like, we need to expose ourselves out there. Like, the people need to see who we are so that we can grow this. So what I've been telling them, like, we need to make it a habit to go out publicly. Like, dude, and I've told them, I was like, dude, take it from me, I'm very fucking antisocial. I'm an introvert. I don't like going out. I don't like dealing with people. I'm not ashamed to say that. I hate people. I don't like lines. I don't like people. I don't like stores. None of that shit. I keep to myself. I like being by myself. That's just who I am.
Yeah.
But we've taken this. We've got this. I did this with a purpose. We did this with a purpose. And in order for it to grow, we need to like be out there. And that's why I told them we need to make it a habit to go out. And that's why we've been trying to make it back out to your open mic. We wanna go to other open mics that other people have told us about, that so that people know, like you said. I know you said it jokingly, but I mean it, so that people know who are the Bouncing Brains, like why are they doing, what are they about, and we discover other talent. How do I get on that?
Yeah,
the people that we've gotten is because we know them. Other people that we didn't know, which has only been like one person, we got them through good graces.
But we've met each other through the same artistic
community
circle.
and artistic
so
circle.
It's very important. So for those who listen this far, those who listen this far, please share it, and please let people know that this Bouncing Brains is a way to discover new art. It is as simple as just saying that, hey, you want to find out about some new art, some local art, Bouncing Brains, and it's there's other things that are allowing for local art, and man, it's raw. It's not art that is filtered by the regular mediums that you're used to receiving art through. It's pure like valley art that got rejected by every possible professor, and these guys are still doing it. You know what I'm saying? So it's art that is pure, and so it what am I trying to say, man?
It's local art that is pure.
Yeah, it's fresh, it's new. So we people should share it. People should check it out. And they get to see, this is what I was going to say, they get to see the artist's growth, right? That's one that's one amazing thing of being able to experience the Valley community of art, because since it is a growing community of art, you don't just get to see these finished works. Through listening to these podcasts, you get to see how these artists are evolving, and you get to completely learn a lot from everything, and seeing how the everything that I brought in here today into this podcast, I did not bring in alone. It's things that have been brought in through experiences that I've had in the artist community through the past 2 years, you know?
Yeah.
So it's not arbitrary. It comes from learning from everything. So artists out there, check out the Bouncing Brains and see that it's a place to see art emerging. It's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Emerging art.
Yeah.
You heard the motherfucker. Send us your availables.
Definitely. And I do want to go ahead and wrap this up here. Like with that was, I think that was a great ending point, but I also do want to wrap it up because there's another thing that I would like to talk to you about with Sean here and me, but kind of off camera. And for the people listening, it's just because
I didn't agree to that. Yeah.
what we were talking, or what I want to talk to them about, it's not entertaining. It's kind of like, it's not entertaining.
Okay, we'll save that boring shit, Lemon. You talking about local artists off the top of your head? Can you name 3 that people should be paying attention to?
Checking out here local arts. Well, there's definitely our poet laureate, right? Errol Vidarre. He's the poet laureate right now. And then the next poet laureate, Rodney Gomez, I believe is his name. He's another really, really good poet. When it comes to musicians, there's a lot of very interesting bands. Some of the bands that we've gotten at Luna's, we have Five Before Midnight. We have what are they? I forgot their name. There's this one band that everybody has enjoyed a lot, man. I can't recall their name right now, man. Sorry. And then when it comes to comedians, man, we have Freddy, we have Rudy, we have and for instance, right now we're gonna have the next Rabbit on the Moon anthology coming out. That is an anthology we made with Luna Coffee House, and that one features 3 artists. Because kind of like what you guys are doing with Rabbit on the Moon, we want to open a space for the community, and we have an artist come in, be our Rabbit on the Moon, and he or she proposes a topic, and then we have people submit under that topic. For this one, we had 3 featured artists. They're really awesome. We had Luis Cantu, who does he works with a looper, and he does comedy and music, and he's also a host. We have Rudy Barba, who's a comedian, and we have Brian Ventura, who is also a comedian. The 3 of them have very different, very unique approaches at poetry. The 3 of them are from the Valley, and they're a completely different experience that these 3 comedians give you. So I would recommend for you guys to check them out: Brian Ventura, Rudy Barba, and Luis Cantu. And they're gonna be.
We know them all. Yeah,
you had them. You had them all.
Been on the podcast. And I was going to say I still have the recordings that we did for when y'all were starting on the anthology back in.
May. I have them. I have them. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, as soon as you let me know the anthology is coming out, I'm going to release those interviews, and hopefully we can even maybe get the 4 of you back in here, hell, man, you saying
that would be fantastic.
You're saying Nick Signs is kind of taking a bit of.
That's another artist, man, that you guys need to have. Check out Nick Martinez Signs. He is a local tattoo artist, man, and he's been moving really, really well in his progress through his tattoos. And he helped me with the design of this anthology. And he's doing, man, this guy has a vision, dude. Like, and he's coming up with these really nice ideas that go with the theme. And it's very, when you guys see it, you guys will see, what the art is inspired of and how it goes with the theme. Everything is cohesive. Very, very good. He's also he might also help me out with other projects, hopefully in the theater maybe. And so he's an artist that has a lot of potential, does a lot of work, and he's really good at. You tell him, hey man, this is what I would like you to draw for my tattoo. And he knows how to draw something.
Maybe he can help me with my logo.
Yeah, he will definitely help you with your logo.
I need help with a logo for my company.
Yeah,
because I want to have my own logo. That's been in the works for over a year or two.
And this guy made our logo for Rabbit on the Moon and everything. So
yeah, and hopefully maybe after the anthology comes out and we've I've released the podcast and everybody's had a chance to kind of read on it, we can get you guys back in here to kind of give the not retrospective. I know there's another term for that, but the fond remembrance, looking back on the concept and seeing what the end product kind of stirs within you.
Yeah. It was a fun podcast, man.
Yeah, dude, we're looking forward to what you got coming.
And our other editor for that one is Damien Duque. You guys also had him.
Yeah.
So we had Damien Duque and Nick Martinez Sands working on the anthology. Yeah.
Right.
I've been reaching out to the one I want to get in here, man. Because I really do think he's quiet. I'm pretty sure you're going to remember when I mentioned him. He's quiet, but I think he's the type of person that if you kind of dig at him a little bit, I think he has some interesting conversations. Joseph,
yeah.
Hernandez.
Yeah.
I've been trying to get him in here, but he just got hit with another flood, man. So
really? That's why we haven't seen him around?
Yeah. I was talking to him, man, and he was like, man, I've been through a real tough time. That's why I haven't been out at all.
Joseph needs to come out, man, because people have been asking about him.
And he's good, man. He's good when he does poetry, and he's good when he does what is that freaking instrument? They've told me like 5 times. It has a weird-ass name.
The circle instrument that... Ding, 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 ding.
Oh, shit.
Hand drum.
It's
a hand drum.
Yeah,
I think that's what it is, a hand drum. Another artist, Ronnie, I think, what's his last name? I think it's Gomez? Ronnie. He's the one that did that film As I Walk Through the Valley. And it's a documentary on the history of local bands.
Garza?
Ronnie Garza. Is it Ronnie Garza? And he does he's a musician. He writes poetry, and he recently, Ronnie Garza. And he's recently he was putting an anthology together of it was a sound recording, like of an anthology that you listen to about the border and all that. And he was putting that together recently. He's working on a lot of projects, so I think it would be nice to have Ronnie here. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. You want to throw out, because you've already got 1 or 2 of the Rabbit on the Moon anthologies have already been out.
We had one which was Recovery, where Damien Duque was the featured artist, and this one is #NoFilter.
Okay. You want to give out the links and
right now you can look for it on Facebook, Rabbit on the Moon Anthology, and you'll see we haven't posted anything new. If you really want to find out when it's going to be released, also like Luna Coffee House on Facebook, and you'll find out about our open mics every Saturday from 9 to 12, and also the Rabbit on the Moon Anthology release that will be tentatively happening late October. Also, I know that they're having a book release by Miranda Rocha. She's releasing
on the 12th.
On the 12th, yeah. So like Luna Coffee House, there's plenty of events happening there all the time. Like Rabbit on the Moon, like the FAR Community Theater. They're always open for auditions. Right now, the next auditions are on the 24th and the 25th. We're looking for people of all ages. Please come in. Tejano Christmas Carol, great adaptation of Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, just in a Tejano way. You know, the Ghost of Christmas Past es una rielera. It's a woman from the Mexican Revolution in this adaptation. So there's some really neat, awesome stuff happening in this play. Come check it out. Come audition. Theater teaches you a lot about a lot of different things that will help you in a lot of different areas of your life. If you are an artist, whether you're a painter or a comedian, it'll help you with stage presence, with interpretation, with delivery, a whole bunch of things that will help, that you will learn off of the experience, even if it's just one play that you do in your life. But you please audition if you feel the bug to do it. The play will be released late November, early December. If you're interested in watching it, just like the FAR Community Theater. And readings, I will be doing upcoming readings. I will be in the new anthology of Fay Paul 2018. That one's gonna be released October 3rd, 4th, and 5th, I believe it is, at the McAllen Public Library. So at the McAllen Public Library, we have this awesome 3-day event happening in October called Fay Paul, and it is an awesome experience that just gets you super inspired. Poetry everywhere. So check out Fay Paul. I'm gonna be reading there. I will be having an event with Lluvia Loralai on November 7th, I believe it is. And that one is going to be about her book, Hablando con el Espejo. Let me just make sure that it is on that date. Okay. No, I can't tell here. But yeah, you can also look for Lluvia Loralai for more information on her.
Okay, I'm assuming that you have.
Am I on?
You're on,
Yeah?
man.
Okay.
You're back on.
You can't hear yourself?
I can hear it.
You can't hear in the headphone?
Hello? Okay, I can hear it now.
Okay, I was going to say it may have come unplugged while we were moving cables around. I'm assuming most of this is posted up on your. You've got a artist page right up. On Facebook.
And I haven't actually posted everything, but look for me, Seres Jaime Magaña, author. You're more than welcome to send me a friend invite. If you're an artist, send me a friend invite, and we can get connected as artists on my personal page. I do post information about the theater on my author's page, so that one you'll find out about the auditions and when the play will be released. And I will try my best to post every other thing there too.
Okay, man. Yeah, if there's any other connections, I don't know. If you got a Snapchat out there, you want people...
No, not at all. That's it. Just you're all invited to come out to Luna Coffee House every Saturday, 9 to 12. I occasionally host at Yerberia Cultura. That one, we do have it every Monday. You're more than welcome to join us. Mac Nights at Yerberia Cultura.
Are you still hosting the other one, or is that all?
Manas, we will get it started again soon. It was put aside for a little while, but I am hoping. So I do keep a lookout. I am hoping to get more open mics running around the valley. I'm figuring out how to get this going, but I do want to open up the space in more places that are a little spread out from each other, so that we can get a little bit of new art, and people don't have to travel too far to come to an open mic. Gotcha. You know.
I've said this a couple times to comics and various artists we've had on here. I encourage them to go out and start doing the podcast type of thing, because I don't look at it as like, well, if we all start doing this, it's like, well, we're all not going to be having the same conversations.
Exactly.
And the upside is if they do your podcast, they go, I know what a podcast is, and they're more likely to do ours too.
Yeah, exactly. So we all just connect. Yeah. So yeah, man, those
Can't leave it all to the comics. We'll fill it up with dick jokes and inappropriate references.
I know, man. I'm the comic in me right now. It's knocked out, man.
I didn't even know that there was a comic in you. I don't think you want to put it out there like that.
What's
What?
his name?
Comic in me, chinga.
I will point out, I've been to quite a few open mics with Mr. Magaña here, and more often than not, he's sitting with the dirty dick joke slingers. So
I don't do none of those.
It was great having you, man. You wanna throw?
you can always find me at hatfieldstandup@gmail.com, as well as Hatfield Standup on Facebook and Twitter, and Sean Hatfield on YouTube.
And you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram across the board at Freddy G.
You can get in touch with us at bouncingbrainspodcast@gmail.com, as well as Bouncing Brains Podcast on Facebook. We have a group. You can have a chat. You can tell us how wrong we were about the interpretation of classical literature and character motivation.
Please do.
And we are on Twitter. We are on Stitcher. We are on YouTube. You can find us in all these places, and we do encourage you to watch, have an opinion, say something, even if it's just neat. That works.
And I second that. I also do want to go ahead and announce that I do have a show coming on the... well, first of all, since Sean forgot, we have a charity event on the 21st. We will be recording an episode of the Bouncing Brains at the actual charity event on the 21st, which takes place at Hierberia Cultura. And the charity event is called...
Give a Hand. Though I must point out that Freddy seems to have forgotten this episode will probably air after that has already been finished.
Then scratch.
But hey, go on Facebook. You click.
Never mind.
Click interested. People will think you went. They'll think you're cool. Think you're a giving, charitable person.
Yeah.
Hey, we won't tell on you.
I will.
And
I judge all of you.
And the other thing,
a poem about it.
the other thing I also do want to go in and...
Where's your beef track now, bitch?
The other thing I also did want to go ahead and announce was I was just told today as well that I will be entering in a competition for the Funniest in the RGV, and that takes place in November. So this podcast will be out before then, right?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure. So I do have that coming up. So just want to put that out there so you can also go ahead and attend if you'd like. It takes place at Cine El Rey downtown, and I believe it's on November the 14th.
Yeah.
So I have that going.
Yeah. If you look me up, just look for Seres with an S. Seres Jaime Magaña.
And it's the same forwards and backwards. Right?
It's the same forwards and backwards, Seres and Seres. So you never know which Seres you're gonna get. And yeah, look for the Far Community Theater and Luna Coffee House. Yeah.
Awesome.
Seres, it's always a enlightening, if not lengthy, conversation as well.
Right, lengthy for sure, man. Thank you guys for having me, man. It was
my heart says I love you. My bladder says go fuck yourself.
I ran.
Yeah, man. I was, and I have been wanting to have you in here for a while now. And
yeah, I had been wanting to come, man. I had the play going on. You know, we had we came out in the Monitor. We had full sold out houses.
I saw that.
So we had a really good time, man. Hopefully the next play turns out just as good. And so I was really busy with that. I'm glad that I was able to make some time finally, man.
Gotcha.
I think you've shown up enough in the paper at this point that the last time I saw your picture and I was just like, I know that guy.
In the last one, man, when we came out in the front cover, they didn't mention my name at all in the article, man. But you know, they have a lot to work with, and they did.
Who's that guy? The director, yeah.
The director, man, yeah, that guy.
The one that wrote the play.
No, but you know, they did put some opinions from some of our other cast members, and so it was a really good article at the end of the day.
That's good. I hope the local media is slowly catching up with the idea that they can cover local stories.
Definitely, yeah. No, that's.
I've wanted to go down to the offices of Festiva more than a few times and just start yelling my opinions at them, but I'll hold back for now.
Scream them out in the podcast.
Gentlemen, it was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure.
Until
Thank
next
you guys.
time.
Y'all have a good night.
Y'all have a good one.
Night.